W.B. Yeats. Most people in Ireland know him as a poet and a dramatist, and perhaps some of you might know that he was a member of Shanadairn. Born in County Dublin to a Protestant Anglo-Irish family in 1865, Yeats struggled with the sense of Irishness at a time when Ireland itself was rediscovering its own identity. He lived to the age of 74 and died in the south of France, yet he also has strong connections with the west of Ireland. And for 12 years, he had a summer home at Tour-Ballylee near Gort. As Yeats said about the area, everything is so beautiful that to go elsewhere is to leave beauty behind. On the autograph tree in the walled garden at nearby Coole Park, his signature can be found scrawled alongside other Irish literary giants such as George Bernard Shaw and Sean O'Casey. Certainly, it was when Yeats was in the West that he wrote some of his most inspired works, including The Tower and Ballylee. And in this programme, we look in depth at Yeats and his connection to the local area.
What does Yeats mean to you?
Well, he was one of the great poets of Ireland who spent a lot of time in Galway and here in Coole Park.
I know that I shall meet my fate somewhere among the clouds above.
Great writer, and he lived here for many years with a lot of other well-known writers, Lady Gregory and Casement and Beckett.
I know he was very friendly with Lady Gregory, who lived here in Coole Park.
All his beliefs in the other world, it's reflected in a lot of his poetries and his plays that he wrote later in life as well.
I know he visited here when Lady Gregory lived here and spent a lot of time.
There's a lot of history in this area from Yeats, Tour-Ballylee and Coole Park.
Do you know what, I actually did his poetry in school, but I actually wouldn't be familiar with many of it, but I know that he is a great poet.
What I know about W. Yeats is reading of his time here in South Galway and buying the Tour-Ballylee and going to live in Tour-Ballylee with his family.
And have you heard about the 150th celebration of Yeats' birth?
I have indeed, yes. It's earlier in the year, I think. I'm not sure what month though.
Yes, I do.
I'm learning more now at the moment because of the 150th birthday this year and the effort being made to open Tour-Ballylee again.
Which poems of W.B. Yeats's would you remember?
The only one basically I remember was The Lake Isle of Finish Free.
Fortunately, my poetry isn't great and I wouldn't be big into poetry, I'm afraid, and I wouldn't be sure.
Well, I would say The Wild Swans at Coole and To a Squirrel at Kyle would be the two ones I would associate with Coole.
Of clay and wattles made, 9 bean rows will I have there, a hive for the honeybee, and live alone in the bee-lad glade, and live alone in the bee-lad glade.
Yeats was born in 1865 in Sandymount, Dublin. He spent most of his childhood in Merville, County Sligo, with his extended family. His mother was from a wealthy merchant family who owned a milling and shipping business in Sligo town. In 1867, the family moved to England to aid their father John further his career as an artist. Initially, the Yeats children were educated by their mother at home. William began attending Godolphin School from January 1877. His performance there was described as poor and that he had terrible spelling. By the end of 1880, the family had returned to Dublin for financial reasons. Yeats resumed his education there at Erasmus Smith High School. It was during this period he started writing poetry.
I will arise and go now and go to Innisfree, and a small cabin build there of clay and wattles made. 9 bean rows will I have there, a hive for the honey bee, and live alone in the bee-loud glade. and I shall have some peace there, for peace comes dropping slow, dropping from the vales of the morning to where the cricket sings. There midnight's all a glimmer, and noon a purple glow, and evening full on in its wings. I will arise and go now, for always night and day I hear lake water lapping with low sounds by the shore, while I stand on the roadway or on the pavements grey. I hear it in the deep heart's core.
Do you know the autograph tree?
Yes, I do, definitely, most definitely. It's absolutely amazing.
Steeped in history, because you can still read all the names there because they're etched into the tree, so very interesting.
What I know about W. Yeats is reading of his time here in South Galway and buying the Torbellillee and going to live in Torbellillee with his family, and then becoming involved with becoming a great friend of Lady Gregory's and Edward Martin, and being part of the group that formed the Abbey Theatre. I'm learning more now at the moment because of the 150th birthday this year and the effort being made to open Torbellillee again.
The trees are in their autumn beauty, the woodland paths are dry. Under the October twilight, the water mirrors a still sky.
So you're very, very welcome to Wild Atlantic Waves Yeats special, and thanks Scott for putting together that initial piece which brought us into Yeats with some biography and some, of course, of the history behind Yeats' association with Cool and with South Galway. Did you find anything new in it when you were, that new to you when you were looking at Yeats?
It certainly did, yeah. He's a very rich life, and also I wasn't really aware of his connections with the local area. So yeah, for me it was a complete learning experience as to his whole life. Very, very fascinating. So yeah, certainly a lot of. It's amazing what people actually know. You assume that people wouldn't, because it's quite a long time ago that he was writing his poetry, but people are still aware of his work, and it's very, very interesting.
And Lorraine, you actually were looking at some of his biographical in the early part of his life, and we were looking at Torbellillee in particular, and Lorraine and Michelle and myself drove out there early in February, very early, sort of late January and February, and we did a bit of live recording down there, and we did some poetry reading. And then I actually interviewed Fidelma Healy-Eames and Colin Farrell, who are involved in the committee that is trying to get Torbellillee reopened and open to the public in time for Yeats's anniversary. Some of this interview was recorded a while ago, and in the interview, Senator Eames is talking about how they're having a meeting, a public meeting in Gort, and they're going to talk about what they hope to do. That meeting has happened, and there was a huge success, and it got great publicity in the national papers and also on RTE on the news. So I'd say the committee are well on their way to establishing Torbellillee as a cultural centre. So we're going to hear a bit more about Torbellillee right now. We paid a visit to Torbellillee, and Michelle and Lorraine recorded some poetry live at the site.
Under my window ledge the waters race, otters below and moorhens on the top. Run for a mile undimmed in heaven's face, then darkening through the dark rafters cellar drop. Run underground, rise in a rocky place, in cool domain, and there to finish up. Spread to a lake and drop into a hole. What's water but the generated soul?
We were the last romantics chose for theme, traditional sanctity and loveliness. Whatever's written in what poem's name, the book of the people, whatever most can bless. The mind of man or elevate a rhyme, but all is changed, that high horse riderless. Though mounted in that saddle Homer rode, where the swan drifts upon a darkening flood.
I'm standing outside Tourballylee, which was the home that Yeats bought from Lady Gregory, as it was part of the estate, and he bought Tourballylee, and he and his family spent summers here over 12 years. Tourballylee, it has been flooded twice and it has been closed to visitors, and there's a notice on the door right now: Fáilte Ireland National Tourism Development Authority, Yeats Tower, Tourballylee is currently closed. We apologise for any inconvenience. 2015 is the 150th anniversary of Yeats's birth, as most people in the country know at this stage. So, standing outside here on a January morning, you'd hope that it could be reopened. A few days ago, I went to the offices of Fáilte Ireland in Galway City, where I met Senator Fidelma Healy-Eames, and I asked her what news she had from the recent committee meeting for the reopening of Tourballylee.
Thank you very much for your interest. This is a very special year, as you said. It's Yeats 2015, and on the 13th of June we'll mark Yeats' 150th birthday. And obviously our goal, I'm the chairperson of Yeats Tourballylee Society with a very, I suppose, robust committee, I might add. And our goal is to restore, reopen and really launch Tourballylee, the ancestral home of W.B. Yeats, as an education and cultural centre to be open to the public. So it's a hugely ambitious task. We have a very short window of time, but as you said, we've just come out of a meeting and we've made some very important decisions at this meeting, but the one I'd like to tell people about is that we will be launching the programme to restore Yeats Tourballylee on the 6th of February in the Lady Gregory Hotel in Gort. So my call to everybody is to say you are welcome, you're invited, there'll be ways in which you can get involved and help us get started. And obviously funding is going to be critical to this, so there'll be means for people to become a friend of Yeats Tourballylee on that night. So we would love your support. In fact, this is an iconic project locally, nationally and worldwide. Yeats has a very long reach and we feel it's very important to start locally. So this is a special call to people locally and in Galway to come to the Lady Gregory Hotel on the night of the 6th of February at 8 p.m. and we'll fill you in on everything from that point forward.
Colm Farrell is also on the committee, and he gave me some insights into what he hopes to achieve.
Karen, I suppose the most important thing here is Karen, that we as a group have secured the lease of the building going forward to reopen it from Fáilte Ireland, and we hope to have that lease up and running by June 2015. Now, the flooding has been an issue for the last 100 years, but only maybe 4 times in the last 50 years. So if it floods for a month or if it floods for 3 weeks, so be it. All of our furniture, all of our artefacts, everything for the winter months will not be on the ground floor. So it's important to quench the flooding issue, because we've overlooked that, and the building has been there since the 15th century, so hopefully it's going to be there for another 500 years.
Yeah, hopefully, and it would be lovely to see it open yet again, because it is quite a lonely little area when it's not open at the moment, and it's a very beautiful space, and I think the local people perhaps might get more involved. Is there a local element to the committee?
Well, that's my element. I've lived close by the tower and grew up there as a youngster. My dad was a caretaker there for years and years, and he retired about 10 years ago, just before it closed. So he's still alive and he's still anxious that the tower would be reopened, and as I am, and all of the local people there. We held a culture night there last year on Culture Night, and all of the local people came there. We had a fire outside, and there was some poetry recited and some music and some song, and it was a local night, and all of the local people want this iconic building to open again to the world.
This documentary that will be going out in the next week or two, we're concentrating a lot on the local aspects because of the Yeats 2015 the 150th anniversary, and because we're based in Gort. And we're asking people about favourite poems. So do you have a favourite Yeats poem yourself?
I suppose I was never really into poetry, but On the Wall and Yeats must have been, I reckon he was a genius, because on the wall, the poem that's on the wall refers to the building becoming ruin again, and it did actually become ruin again in the 40s, and it was restored again, and he mentions that in that poem, and I think that poem, when it was written by Yeats, is a genius, is part of his genius, because he was able to look into the future, and he knew the building was going to return to ruin again, and it did, but we're adamant that that's not going to happen again, and we don't want that, and that probably is my part of one of my favourite pieces of poetry that he has, along with The Wild Swans of Cool and a few more. One line of his poems, and I don't know which one it is, he refers to leaving Ballylee is leaving beauty behind, which is very symbolic to what we're trying to do going forward. And Ballylee has been the forgotten, I suppose, piece of Irish history of where Yeats lived.
Lines that Yeats had inscribed on a slate set into the walls at Ballylee. I, the poet William Yeats, with old mill boards and sea green slates, and smithy work from the Gort forge, restore this tower for my wife George, and may these characters remain when all is ruin once again. Hopefully, people will be able to see Ballylee before it's ruin once again.
And that was our little piece from Ballylee. And Lorraine, I know I really enjoyed driving down there and working on it. Did you actually enjoy it yourself?
I felt like we kind of stepped back in time. Even we went for a little walk down the forest beside the river, beside Ballylee, and it was really beautiful.
And do you find with the research you were doing earlier about his biography and looking at Sligo and things like that, was there anything that you felt was new that you didn't know about it?
Yeah, I didn't know anything about the black magic phase of his life, and the moving back and forth from London to Ireland I found very interesting. So yeah, I learned a good bit that I had no idea about, because you only really hear about the later years with Cool Park and Lady Gregory and so on.
And Scott, do you think if you were to sort of go and say talk to a group of people who didn't know very much about Yeats and were saying we really don't give a damn about him, do you think there's anywhere you would recommend that they would start?
There's a whole sort of wealth of information on him, and certainly in poetry. There's a great the Waterboys have done a great album. If you're really looking for an introduction to Yeats, it would be, I'm thinking of, look at the Waterboys album. They've done that on him. It's very, very interesting. They've turned a lot of his poetry into songs, and it's a great way if you're looking to get into Yeats.
I know that we were we brought in the biography. We were looking at Ballylee, and then we're talking about, how do you find out about Yeats yourself, or what do people generally know? And I know, Rob, you actually went off and you did a vox pop, and you visited a few sites, I think, did you?
Yeah, vox pop wise, we went from everywhere from Cool Park. You're up at Ballylee yourself. I visited the Cool Park area with the rest of the lads here. We talked with the main manager of the Cool Park area, Hilda McLaughlin, who was very informative, probably too informative for us, and went all the way up to the Lady Gregory Hotel, where the very informed, quite elderly now, Michael O'Grady, a very respectable individual, gave us an awful lot of information and lowdown on, seemed to know a lot more than I did anyway, about the great W.B. Yeats. So I suppose we went to a few other spots in Middletown. Ivan, was there?
Mainly Cool Park now, and around the autograph tree we got the vox pops.
Mostly places where intellects who enjoyed W.B. Yeats hung out, and where he hung out himself. So I suppose that would be a good answer to your other question as well, where to start.
And
Look at all the old places, isn't it?
You asked some variety of questions, I think, was it?
Yeah, everything from what they knew about Yeats to romantic Ireland and modern Ireland. Is it still here? Is it dead and gone? I'm not too sure.
We'll see what they said. Here we go.
I think Yeats would make of Gort today and the modern world.
I'd say he would be, because he was a senator, I'd say he'd be disappointed with politics of today, maybe. I think he would be pleased to see that Cool is still here and still as magical as it was in his time, although with a lot more visitors, so he wouldn't have it all to himself. So changes, and not all for the better.
I'd definitely see big changes anyway, you know. Maybe his poems mightn't be as good, I don't know, with the modern day, you know.
Be an easier way to share his poetry, I suppose, wouldn't it? So, you know, get it out to the masses. Other than that.
I think overall, I think he would like it. I think he was a guy that would have looked at the future and would be a guy who wanted things to happen and make things happen. And, you know, while a lot of his life was done and involved in setting up something in the poetry end of it and in the theatre end of it, that in itself was something that was for the future, not for the present. So I think he would be happy enough with how things are.
And is romantic Ireland dead and gone?
And with O'Leary in the grave. No, I cannot comment on that at all. I'm sorry.
Oh, I wouldn't say it's dead and gone. It's alive to a certain extent, but not like all those years ago now.
Oh, well, I think it's changed a lot since Yeats' time. Depends what you mean by romantic Ireland. There's still plenty of poetry being written about. Cool is, to me, a romantic, beautiful place. But there's been an awful lot of changes.
It is. I think it's all over the world. It's gone, romantic. Yeah,
really?
The romance has gone around the world. I think it's not as easy now.
I don't think so. I would hope it's not. I know. I suppose it became over commercialised in the good times 10 years ago. I think it's coming back more. We're all coming back to more reality now, and you know, I think we've more time, I think, for people and to talk to people, and I think that Ireland is a better country now than it was 10 years ago.
I don't know, it's hard to tell. Everybody's different, aren't they? No, not totally dead and gone. Not as alive as it was in his day, but he was writing just after the Romantic era and stuff, so I don't think it's dead and gone now.
Rainy nights on Aspen Boulevard.
Wild Atlantic Waves. With the 150th anniversary of Yeats's birth, the Cool Music Orchestra Festival decided this year to celebrate the life of Yeats. The festival, which brings together young musicians from around the country to perform, is an annual event, and we asked Katharina Baker, the artistic director, to tell us a little bit about it.
The Cool Music Orchestra Festival is an opportunity for young musicians from all over the country to come together to perform with their orchestras for a big audience and for each other, and also with each other, which is always a special feature of this festival. So we have 2 big festival concerts, and in each festival concert we have 4 orchestras and 2 choirs that first perform for each other and then afterwards premiere a new piece all together in a giant festival orchestra. The afternoon concert is mostly primary school age and a few intermediate orchestras as well. And then the evening concert would be more secondary school age, so I'd say around 12 to 18. And this year they're coming from, well, we have a group from Dublin, we have a group from Roscommon, we have a group from Limerick, then we have an orchestra from Galway, an orchestra and choir from Athenry, and then we have our own orchestras from Gort and choirs as well from Gort.
We asked Katharina why they'd chosen to incorporate a Yeats theme into this year's show.
Well, we wanted to connect with the nationwide movement to celebrate Yeats' 150th anniversary. So there's numerous events going on all around the country, and because Yeats had such a close connection to this area since he had a summer house in Torbally and has written a lot of his poetry in Cool Park, we thought it would be great to become part of that celebration.
Katharina explained how the festival is funded.
In the past, we have always gotten some funding through the Arts Council. This year we haven't, but this year we got some funding from the Yeats 2015 fund, where 20 different events all around the country have been funded. So we are very grateful that we could still put it on this year with the help of that funding.
So that's the look at Yeats and music and what's actually happening there. Chris?
Hi, Karen.
How you doing?
Are you picking me up there? Okay.
I'm picking you up fine,
lovely.
babes. Listen, you're an artist. Have you been? I know that recently they were actually the Nyland Gallery in Sligo have had a bit of a sort of a spring clean, and they've taken out some magnificent paintings, and they have the biggest Jack Yeats collection.
Yes.
And I think for Yeats 150 they're having a special sort of exhibition. But have you come across anything recently in terms of Yeats that would make you want to, maybe just for this year, do something special on Yeats yourself?
I suppose, funnily enough, because I live not far from Cool Park, I was talking to somebody about the autograph tree from Sligo. They hadn't seen it, so I took some photographs of it to show them. And even though I'd seen it several times, it was a beautiful day, and the light was wonderful going across the rough surface of the signatures, and it just made me think visually how it could be quite interesting to translate into some form of print or painting. So I'm thinking of doing a few things based on that. Because I love working with archaic surfaces, aged surfaces, and how things eroded through time, and it becomes like a time capsule. So when you see the autograph tree, it's like a time capsule. It's wearing away, but with all these great signatures of these beautiful poets and writers from that period. So it's a sort of living thing, but at the same time it's slowly dying, but it still breathes their last breaths through their names on the tree. I don't know if that makes any sense.
That makes lovely sense.
I should write that down.
Yeah. Well,
Maybe I'll give up the day job painting. I'll start writing these things down, these wild thoughts.
But it sounds like a great project to become involved with.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a wonderful place, Cool Park, and when you come across the autograph tree, it's such a peaceful part of the park, the way it's in like an enclosed orchard area, isn't it? It's protected from the rest of the forest, but sadly at the moment they're cutting all the trees down around the orchard area. They're going to clear at least 50% of the trees in Cool Park. I couldn't believe it. I was there on holiday. I was there visiting the other day, going for a walk, and there's always chainsaws and trees falling down, and I asked the local forester what's going on. He says, we're putting all these trees down because they're not indigenous to Ireland. And that's crazy, because it's still part of Irish history. They've been there for probably 60, 70 years. So surely that's part of people's relatively new history. I mean, I won't tell how old I am, but so people have been going for years, and that's still significant to their lives. It's a touchstone in a sense. So, I mean, for instance, what are the tourists going to do when they visit the summer and there's just a bare forest around where the house was? I mean, it's one of the main tourist attractions in Gort. And to me, it seems farcical that they're levelling all the trees and planting new ones.
Well, it seems
because they're not indigenous.
It seems weird to be taking them down for that reason. I mean, I know I was in Adair recently, and they had with the storm last year, they'd had a lot of tree falls down about the domain in Adair Manor, and they have to come down because unfortunately they're dangerous.
Yeah, some definitely did have disease. Not the whole forest, but there were some famous trees near the outdoor toilets. When you go past the Deers, and there's two huts there, and there's a long avenue of trees that I think they were Dutch elms, and they were diseased. So I could understand why they had to bring those down, but the rest were perfectly fine. It's just such a shock, because you go there now, it's like it looks like trenches. It looks like the First World War. It's so awful what they've done.
Chris, is the plan to replant trees with indigenous Irish ones, or is it just to remove the trees, or what?
Yeah, they're planting local Irish trees. That's the whole idea.
So they will be replaced. Is that the idea?
The problem is they only take 15, 20 years to look like anything. It's going to be small little things. So the problem is this year, with the 150th anniversary, especially with the connection with Yeats and Cool Park, it seems a mad year to do it, because there's surely a lot of tourists coming from abroad to visit the place.
It'll be a generation at least before they looks anything like it did, albeit with different trees, but it's it seems very strange to clear at this time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure the dates of the trees that are levelled. The forester guy said, they're only 50 years old, but I asked some locals to know that they're sure they've been there for 90 years or more, so it's going right back to the time of Yeats, those trees.
Yeah, and they do have a historical relevance as as they stand. Even they may not be indigenous, but they do have a relevance now. Once you plant something, it becomes part of the history.
It becomes part of the land, so it seems a bizarre thing to do.
Yeah.
Can I ask, Ivan, you actually live in Gort, so has Cool Park been a part of your life? Did you actually go out there as a kid? Did you go out and play there? To me, it seems to be the perfect place for kids to go out and make camps and, dens and things like that.
I remember my brother actually camped next to Cool Park one night, but for me, my memories of Cool Park growing up were on Sunday afternoons when Claire would be playing the hurling. My mother used to take us down to Cool, because she used be too nervous to watch the game. So that's where she'd bring me and my 2 older brothers. But to me, like, one of the main attractions of Cool Park is the trees and the forest in it, and I think leveling like half it down this year of all years, it's ludicrous, to be honest.
Can I just say something on that, Karen? Yeah, I can understand what Chris was saying there, and I think what you were talking about there, the trees that were missing, Chris, were a line of old cypress trees that go down that avenue, and they do have a point. They're getting rid of some of the non-native ones that aren't actually worth much, and some of the broadleaf trees will actually grow up quick enough. But I think if you look across the other side of the water, you have the Garrylands area, and that has some of the most, pristine yew trees, oak trees that are going. And an awful lot of people who visit Cool Park don't take the walk around there. There's actually a walking route to the southern side of the lakes where you can walk or cycle through in the summertime. It's probably flooded in the winter, but there's some beautiful old trees and landscape that's evocative of the ancient Ireland, especially with the burren in the background. So I take heart in that, despite the fact it is a little annoying that they're cutting down these trees, but that is kind of the overall of that, I think.
Yeah, so did you feel he would be, how do you feel Yeats would think of this? How was he a modernist? Did he like change? Does anyone have any opinions on that? Or?
I hate to say, Scott, one little article I looked up on Yeats was a couple of quotes about science that he had. I couldn't dig them out at the moment, but I think he mentioned he made a metaphor comparing people to boats or something, and that scientists went out on little boats and got wrecked on the rocks, and that galleons of writers went out and conquered the world every year. So he didn't like science and scientists much, so to me that was a bit of a dark side of WB, so
traditionalist anyway.
He was a very strong believer in the supernatural. Famously he said, there is another world, but it is in this one, and it's intriguing really just how deeply immersed in the world of the supernatural he was. I mean, we all know about his interest in reviving Irish folklore and things like treating the idea of the changeling with the stolen child, and his involvement in the Golden Bough. But there are lots of other interesting stories. I mean, famously, Tour Ballylee was, he believed it to be haunted by an Anglo-Norman soldier. And I think he often talked about meeting dead friends of his and conversing with them. I guess it's kind of not surprising really then, Rob, that he would have had those feelings about scientists, since he seems to be on the other side of the fence.
Pretty understandable, isn't it? Yeah.
But actually, I think the man who took over as curator after he died felt that he and his dog also had a sense of this haunting of the tower. And I think in the late 80s, 1980s, a visitor took a picture there which showed a human form that actually hadn't been in the room when he took the picture. But not only that, but I think we all know about himself and Maud Gonne and his obsession with her, but I think she was very interested in Yeats and his circles for a reason that's just been revealed recently. She would have hidden the fact from Yeats that she had a child with the French politician Lucien Millevoye. He only discovered that quite late in their friendship, but she was very interested in speaking to all of his circle about reincarnation, I think, because her son had died at the age of 2 in France, and so she was just really hoping to find a way to reincarnate him. And I think George Russell, who was the famous writer and mystic, actually advised her that she could do so, that she could revive the soul of her dead son. And so she contacted again the father of George, and they had separated and gone their separate ways, but they got together again and actually made love over the grave of the son.
That's what I was just going to say to you. I thought I'd heard that they actually...
And 1 year later, she gave birth to Iseult, whom in public she refused to refer to as a daughter. Strangely.
Yeah.
So.
Iseult that Yeats then offered his hands to her in marriage before poor George said yes,
Yeah.
But
and of course then there was the automatic writing with himself and George. That was what really one of the big things that attracted him to his wife George, that she had this she felt she was in communication with the spirits.
You've done a bit of that day yourself today, Julie, haven't you? Automatic writing. Are you in touch with the spirit of Yeats? What's all that?
I'm in touch with no spirits myself.
But they said as well, didn't they, that some people say that George was a very canny woman, and that the automatic writing may not have been as automatic as, it was a way of reeling in WB by interesting him in this automatic writing. But I love the Turbally, the idea of a ghost in Turbally, because when I don't know if you felt that, Lorraine, but when we drove down there that day, the landscape was very flooded, and there was something very medieval about the space anyway, and you could almost imagine that the ghosts still linger around that area,
Yeah, that's what I was trying to very inarticulately explain. When you're there, it is like stepping back in time. I don't know about ghosts, but definitely the longer we spent there, the more I felt at peace, and like it was very still and it was very peaceful.
Yeah, it was. I really liked it as well, and I mean it wasn't a bad day, but it was a freezing cold day. But it just didn't feel the time spent there. I didn't feel that I wanted to get away from the place or anything. There was something very, very, very sort of Zen-like about it. It's a weird feeling, actually. What about the boys? Does Zen sound a bit too highfalutin or mad?
No, it doesn't really. I think the idea, you like to think there's maybe a sort of essence still there of Yeats, when you kind of visit these places, when people think of ghosts, we're always thinking of the scary type, but sometimes it's nice to believe that part of you lives on and will be there, immortalised away and sort of within the atmosphere around it.
Well, just talking about immortalisation and immortality and living on, earlier as well, Ivan and myself had a quick look at what is actually happening in this year of Yeats, in the 150th year, in terms of celebrating him. So we're going to just give you an idea of what's coming up right now. So this is a countdown to the Yeats 215 celebrations, here with Karen and Ivan. At home, the programme highlights include worldwide celebrations of Yeats Day on June the 13th. There will be an exhibition of John Yeats paintings at the National Gallery, a celebratory music and poetry weekend of events at the National Concert Hall, and an expanded Yeats summer school in Sligo. There will be theatre dance performances at national arts festivals and widespread literary and poetry events throughout the year. The National Library will host a series of events at its award-winning exhibition, The Life and Works of William Butler Yeats, as will the Galway City Museum and the Model in Sligo. So what do you have there, Ivan?
In Sligo, they've been celebrating Yeats Days for a number of years. The poet's birthday is on June 13th, and the festivities take place over 4 days with a special cake for the poet's birthday and a noble dinner amongst the many commissioned events. Staying in Sligo, the annual Yeats International Summer School takes place from July 26th to August 7th. There will be lectures, readings, social events and outings. One of Yeats' plays will be studied and performed on the final night. Visit www.yeatssociety.com to get a flavour of this year's programmes. The Tread Softly Festival runs in tandem with the summer school, and even if you just happen to be visiting Sligo during the year, it's worthwhile dropping into the Yeats Society headquarters in the centre of Sligo, where you can read in the library, look at exhibitions and have a damn fine scone and coffee in Lily and Lolly's, the cafe named after Yeats' sisters.
Meanwhile, back in the capital, University College Dublin headlined the act in June with their Bloomsday event, which invites 3 internationally known poets to consider the significance of Yeats in 2015. Also, exciting new work is being commissioned to celebrate Yeats 2015. The Abbey Theatre is going to stage a new dance project choreographed by Liz Roach. In September, the National Concert Hall is going to present a weekend devoted to musical responses to Yeats' work, which is actually, I think, a really exciting thing, because you're going to be looking over a selection of different genres of work. The events are being curated in a collaborative process between the poet Paul Muldoon and Thomas Bartlett. And Thomas Bartlett is a fascinating young man. He's an American musician who has worked with artists such as The Gloaming and Martha Wainwright and Talking Heads' David Byrne. So that's something that I think is going to be one of the most interesting highlights of the whole year.
Tourism Ireland will also run an international campaign to increase awareness of Ireland's great literary heritage and the places that inspired Yeats. All around the world, a series of events will take place to commemorate Yeats Day, featuring exhibitions at Ireland's Embassy Network and international library locations facilitated by the Department of Foreign Affairs. The British Library will host a Yeats poetry reading in memory of the Irish writer Josephine Hart, who inaugurated the library's Poetry Hour readings in 2011. Yeats Day will also be celebrated in Tokyo, Washington, Paris and New York, with more locations to be announced later in the year.
And the most important thing is everyone is invited to join the party. Speaking at the launch originally earlier in 2014, the chair of Yeats 2015, who is Senator Susan O'Keefe, said that any organisation holding a Yeats themed event in 2015 is also being invited to submit their event through www.yeats2015.com site. And the website itself actually is going to give information on existing and new events taking place during the year, and it's going to make it easy for people at home and abroad to experience the whole Yeats celebrations. And I think the other thing that's interesting is that the Western Development Commission is an organisational partner for Yeats 2015, so there's a real Western element to the whole thing. I think the celebrations will actually probably be at their best in the West. So have you anything else there, Ivan?
One of my favourite Yeats events has already begun. Since New Year's Day, Hardigan's Pub in Sligo has held open readings of Yeats poems every weekday at 1 and 6 o'clock on Sunday. So if you plan on being in Sligo this year, book yourself a slot. You can be part of the audience, or you can participate. The Yeats 2015 website invites everyone to upload a recording of your own favourite Yeats poem. President Michael D. Higgins is doing it, so why don't you?
So my choice for today is To a Child Dancing in the Wind, and I've chosen it because for some reason it's the only poem of Yeats I can recite by heart, and it's from his collection Responsibilities, which was published in 1916. To a Child Dancing in the Wind. Dance there upon the shore, what need have you to care for the wind or the water's roar, and tumble out your hair that the salt drops have wet. Being young, you have not known the fool's triumph, nor yet love's lost as soon as won, nor the best labourer dead and all the sheaves to bind. What need have you to dread the monstrous crying of the wind? wildatlanticwaves.wordpress.com. So that was a little roundup, and I know that Ivan, I think you've got a little bit more that's coming up. We had the festival in Gorton. You wanted to talk about that?
Yeah, that was a very good reading. I have to say that poem, Karen, it was quite chilling. Actually, quite reminded me of the ghost stories we were on about just before we played that. But yeah, there was a festival in Gort recently, the I Will Arise and Go Now festival. It ran from March the 13th, actually, on a Friday the 13th, again going back to Yeats's occult beliefs, and it ran all the way until March the 22nd, and on the final day, a Sunday, they had a St. Patrick's Day parade festival, and the theme of the parade was actually Yeats, and they had reenactors of Yeats and Lady Gregory in a horse-drawn carriage on in the parade, and it also actually featured on the news. Thomas showed me a clip of it on Monday. It was the last St. Patrick's Day parade in the country, actually, occurring 5 days after the event, but we'll say nothing about that. Also, other festivities that happened. On the opening day, there was an art exhibition and music in the Gort Library, and both of them featured artists from the Kinvara Association of Visual Artists, and the music was provided by Sonic Strings. And there was a screening of Seamus Heaney's movie Out of the Marvellous that took place actually at the Lady Gregory Hotel. Seamus Heaney being a fellow Irish poet. And one of the big events of it was an open reading at the Gort Library, the Over the Edge reading. And it featured Susan Lindsay, Christopher Meehan, Marion Cox and Kevin Higgins as the featured readers. And after their readings of their favourite Yeats' poems, the audience was allowed to go on the open mic and read their favourite Yeats' poems.
I did that myself. Yeah, I was there. Yeah, we got to read.
And a similar reading actually takes place in the Galway City Library tonight at 6:30. So if anyone feels like going, it's
that's a date. Yeah, and also in Galway, just something that I got in the post the other day, the Town Hall Theatre, there's something on in June, so it's something people could put down for their diaries as well, and it's called Songs from the Swans at Cool, and it's a musical setting for a series of songs and poems with an orchestra of traditional Irish musicians and some actors as well, so that looks interesting. So thanks a million for that, Ivan. That's cool. Chris, you've got to tell the Rasher story.
Oh yeah, on a lighter note, I picked up this possibly urban myth about Yeats's meanness. I could be wrong. I can't find anything actually written down about this, so this is just something that's built up. The source is my late father-in-law, the late P.B. Ryan. He was a local school principal in Portumley. He's from Galway, but he's obsessed by Yeats. He's almost like a Yeats scholar. And anyway, he was always trying to convert me to Yeats. This one first came to Ireland about 20 years ago, and I must be such a doll's head. Mostly went over my head what he said, except one thing, which is probably the wrong thing to have talking, but it sort of stuck with me. He said the only thing he couldn't fathom out about Yeats was when he lived in Torbally for those 12 years, he used to cycle in every day to get a rasher, to cycle back Cook. He loved the rasher, apparently. And I just thought, that's so odd, because the wife was back in town, the kids, did not bring back one for them and the kids. It just seemed very mean to me, but I'm sure there's more to the story. But he couldn't fathom that, because that was the story. He just went for this single rasher. I thought, that doesn't make any sense. Has anybody heard that story?
When you told us, I heard it then.
Oh, right.
That was the first I'd heard of it, though.
No, one rasher or two. Yeah, you imagine you get two. I mean, they usually go together. You're not going to buy a single rasher, are you? I mean, surely you get a couple of eggs and
you could save yourself sausages. A few trips in the week if you got a batch.
I just thought it was bizarre. It's leading this romantic life in the tower and then get the rasher.
Romantic.
Out, which was good, because he's not...
Sounds like he was a bit tight, Chris, to be honest with you.
Sorry?
Sounds like he was a bit tight, just buying one rasher.
Maybe just not very logic. Romantics aren't known for their logic, though, are they?
True. Yeah, he was quite eccentric, I guess, quite scatty.
But he liked to have fun poked at him and his unusual politics. And I love that cartoon by the Dublin cartoonist of him and George Russell setting out to meet each other. They're 2 doors apart, and Yeats's nose is in the sky philosophising, and George Russell is looking down at the ground being pragmatic, and neither of them meet. They just pass each other even though they've set out to meet each other from 2 doors apart. And I think he kind of liked having fun, poked at himself a little bit like that.
He had seemingly, I think as well, we sort of see the grey-haired Yeats and the Senator Yeats and things like that, but seemingly he did have a very good sense of humour, and he wasn't, Lady Gregory's grandchildren said they were kind of scared of him, because seemingly when he was writing his poems, often he used to sort of intone them, and he'd be walking around intoning the poems, and they didn't get under his feet, But actually, when he sort of came out of that sort of space, that he was actually quite nice. They kind of liked him,
I was going to ask you that. Did he have a night off from that image he has? Because he's also got a foreboding presence. You see pictures of him, he looks quite unapproachable and quite lofty and very hoity-toity with the molecule thing. What's the thing has in his eye there? Yeah. So that's interesting, because I was wondering, the night itself we went to the pub, put the shell suit on, and just had a laugh at the lads and watched the game. Get rid of that persona for 5 minutes.
I don't know about the shell suit, but there's you're talking about
that image.
There's a painting for you, Chris.
There's a painting.
Yeah, I know.
Yeats in a silver tracksuit.
The cartoonist Annie West, who's up in Sligo, she's
done some fantastic cartoons of him, and she's obviously very fond of him. But she gave him a purple scarf and a sort of a maroon jacket, and obviously the flowing hair and everything. And one of my favourite ones it's called "That's Another Valentine Day's Ruined," and his pockets are stuffed with love you LUV cards, and they're all addressed to Maud Gonne, and the postman's arriving to him with a restraining order from Maud Gonne.
You do wonder though, like, did he have a bit more of a bohemian youth? You know, we see all these conservative pictures of him, but is there times when he was in his teenage years or in his 20s when he was a bit wilder than this perceived picture of him, you know?
Well, he was a complete bohemian in a way.
Exactly, yeah.
So he's well-dressed bohemian.
Because you hear him on the audio takes make him sound a little conservative, you know?
And his father was a great role model. And who is it? John McGahern, I think, edited a volume of his father's letters. And some of those letters to both of his sons are very... They're very understanding of the creative process, because their father was a creative man himself. He was a painter as well. And both of his sisters actually set up a press, the Koala Press, and they had imprints of some of his work, but they were very important at the beginning, sort of, of that whole revival of the Irish literary revival as well. So I think as a family, there was a very interesting mix of sort of the Yeats, you know, Daddy Yeats, who was a bit eccentric, and he actually ended up living in America towards the end of his life, and the Pollexfans, who were the sort of the merchant people. So there was the sort of solid merchants from Sligo, and then there was this sort of kind of more dizzy sort of Yeats thing. And he spent an awful lot of time in London, and I think as well, anybody, you know, when you travel abroad, you almost have a slightly different persona that isn't the persona you have with your family.
You can afford to party and not get caught in your local locality and be embarrassed about it.
But they do say, don't they, that if it weren't for the two sisters, the family would have been living in the gutter, really. That the two boys, Jack and William, were just complete artistic layabouts in a way, that they were, you know, their heads were in the clouds, and that they had no mind for kind of keeping an income coming into the family, and the two sisters held it all together.
It reminds me of was it Karl Marx when he was writing Das Kapital, and his wife said, "Would you stop talking about capital and go out and actually make some?" Yeah. It's kind of these arty types who'll just write away with things and not actually earn anything.
Well, I think it's been really good fun having a great old chat about WB and wondering what he would think of us now and what we thought of him. And we're actually going to leave you with we're going to leave the last word to the man himself, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say. And we're going to leave you with some readings now of Yeats reading his own work with some topical music just underneath it, and we hope you enjoy it very much.
And these are accompanied by Emer's Dream by Colin McInerney. Beautiful piece of music.
Great. Thanks a million. That's brilliant, Julie. And here we go. Here's Yeats.
In the constant vision of the sky, and like the soul it sails into the sight, and in the morning's gone no man knows why, and his soul lovely that is set to right, what knowledge of its lack had set awry, so arrogantly pure a child might think it can be murdered with a spot of ink. Sound of a stick upon the floor, the sound of somebody that toils from chair to chair. Beloved book, the famous hands of brown, old marble heads, old pictures everywhere, great rooms where travelled men and children found content or joy, a lasting terror, where none has reigned but left the name and pain, or out of folly into folly came. rise and go now and go to Innisfree, and a small cabin build there, play and wackles made. 19 rows will I have there, a hive for the honey bee, and live alone in the bee-loud glade. And I shall have some peace there, for peace comes dropping slow, dropping from the vales of the morning to where the cricket sings. There midnight's all a glimmer, and noon a purple glow, and evening full of linnet's wings. I will arise and go now, for always night and day I hear lake water lapping with low sounds by the shore, while I stand on the roadway or on the pavements grey. I hear it in the deep heart's core.